कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य नित्यानंद अद्वैत गदाधर सदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Hare Krishna. So, in this afternoon series, we'll be discussing the principle of how Krishna loves each one of us and how that loving nature of Krishna is manifested in our lives as well as in scripture. So we'll talk about it based on a section of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'd like to ask all of you before we begin, if somebody asked you, what is the Bhagavad Gita about? What is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita? What would you tell? Yes? How to serve the Lord. Okay, true. Let's put it this way. Somebody who has no interest in, somebody who is very new to spirituality, say another co-student or a relative, who has not much interest in spirituality or God, how would we talk about the relevance of the Gita to them? Sorry? How to balance material? Okay. Balance with what? How to balance? When you are balancing, there are two things in a balance, isn't it? So balance material life with what exactly? Increase, decrease? It's maximum. Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. How to achieve more balance in our lives? That's a good thing. Anything else? Really? You only, when I study the Bhagavad Gita, you only tell me there are more problems than what I knew. I didn't know old age, disease, death, and rebirth were problems. You're only adding to my problems. You're not solving my problems. Okay, I'm playing the devil's advocate now. Yes?
How to do work in a new way. Like,
okay.
Actually, I will only work, but I have to learn and things to do in a way in a God manner.
Okay, so we get a new vision or a new approach, a new attitude toward life. Yes, true. Thank you. Regulation in life. Okay. Why do we need regulation? Okay, so regulation can help us. Extremes in life create problems. So the Gita tells us about regulation. True. Good point.
So to answer all of my questions, like anything which comes to my mind, whether it is related to materialistic world or spiritual world.
That's a bit over-ambitious. All questions. If you see, Arjuna spoke the Bhagavad. Arjuna asked Krishna the questions. Did Arjuna ask anything about how to fight, how to use which weapon against which enemy? Did he ask anything about military strategies? your answer is not wrong. Even the answer you gave also about solve all problems is not wrong. But for a person who does not already have faith, it can just seem too unbelievably grand. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. Answer every question. Really, okay, how can I increase the broadband speed of my phone? Does that answer come in the Bhagavad Gita? I mean, your principle is correct. Basically, there are fundamental questions of life. So the Gita provides us, we will explore this. See, in life, there are principles which are more or less universal. And then there may be practices. So practices may be contextual, which come according to time, place, circumstances. So the Gita gives us principles that can provide us a guidance for living. It's like if I want to go on a journey and I have a map, then I can know where I am going. Once I have a map, after that, I may still need a car, I may need a bike, I may go by bus, I may go by plane. So that is a secondary thing. But the most important thing if I want to travel is a map. A map by which I know where I want to go and how I will get there. So, to say that the Gita provides answers to all problems, well, it gives us principles. And when we apply the principles, we can find answers to the various challenges of life. So, it is true what we are saying, but we have to be a little more careful in how we phrase that. If tomorrow says, okay, the world's environment, we are having a lot of environmental problems. What does the Gita say about that? The Gita can tell us some principles. We humans are exploiting nature. When we have that exploitative mentality, that creates problems. I think it is better. Okay. So, I think it is okay. Okay. So, let's look at this from one particular perspective about what does the Gita do. See, broadly speaking, for most people, the world is big and God is small. When I was introduced to Bhakti, I started sharing with everyone else. So when I told my uncle, he said, yeah, I believe in God. He's happy there, I'm happy here. So the idea is, many people think even if God exists, God doesn't matter so much. But as we grow spiritually, as we understand the Bhagavad Gita's wisdom, what happens is, the world becomes smaller and God becomes bigger for us. And then, when Krishna becomes bigger for us, that changes the way we look at the world. That changes how we face life's problems. We can have a greater amount of confidence, a greater amount of clarity. At the start of the Gita, what happened for Arjuna was that he was torn. If we consider the same journey, at the start of the Gita, if this is Arjuna, Arjuna was unable to fight. There are two things. Arjuna was confused and he was discouraged, disheartened. He was in tears. Now, confused is at the level of the buddhi. Discouraged is at the level of the mind. So both his emotions and his intelligence, both were working against him. It means basically he had to fight. So Arjuna had to fight. That was his duty. But neither his mana, his emotions were saying, how can I fight? These are my relatives, how can I kill them? There will be so much bloodshed, so much killing of relatives. They are people of my own dynasty. How can I kill them? And his intelligence was telling, the kingdom is not worth it. A kingdom is not as important as protecting my dynasty. So even from both buddhi and mana, he felt, I can't fight. Some people say that Arjuna became cowardly and Arjuna lost his nerve. But so was Arjuna afraid at the start of the Gita? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? Did Arjuna have fear? Why? Because he's a great hero and we think he's a good person, so he cannot have fear? Do you think Arjuna had fear or not at the start of the Gita? Yes? How do we know? Yes, the physical symptoms of fear were there, isn't it? His bow was slipping out of his hand, his body was trembling, his hair was standing. So Arjuna had fear. Okay? Now, say Arjuna, he had fear. Now then the question comes up, what was the cause of his fear? If somebody is worried. So now, why are you worried? That's an important question. So, what is the reason that Arjuna gives in the first chapter? Why was he so not ready to fight? What was his, if he had fear, what was his fear? Material relationships. That's a very harsh assessment. There's some truth to it. Okay, but let's start from, normally if somebody is a coward, what are they afraid of? I'll be killed. Personal injury. So did Arjuna even once in the first chapter express fear of his own death? Not even once. That is remarkable, isn't it? He's facing against an enemy. There was the fear of his own death. That was not there at all. So then what was the fear? Something stopped him from fighting. What was it? It was the fear of wrongdoing. Wrongdoing means he was afraid that how can I fight against my relatives? So he was afraid of doing adharma. He thought that fighting would be the wrong thing to do. And that is what stopped him. So basically, what happened to Arjuna at the start of the Gita is that in life we have many different duties. Say right now you're sitting and hearing this class. So you are students, you are trying to learn the Bhagavad Gita. So you're sitting and hearing the class. But suppose, say, you also have a responsibility to manage the kitchen. And then somebody from there that, we have a crisis in the kitchen. This person who was supposed to cook has fallen sick. Now then, you look at the phone, your phone messages come and you decide, should I sit here and hear the class or should I go there and attend? Now you can say both are duties, isn't it? Taking care of, that's also a responsibility. And you are coming here to learn the Bhagavad Gita, that's also a responsibility. Sometimes why is this problem coming today? Okay. Okay, let's try that. Is that theory right? Okay. Sorry? Okay, in the morning it worked, isn't it? Okay, we will switch if it doesn't work now onward. So sometimes we may have two duties and the two can be done in parallel. Say if the same person says that, okay, actually our lunch prasadam is cooked, evening prasadam we have an issue. Or then I'll deal with after the class. Okay? But if two things have to be done simultaneously, then it creates a problem. So Arjuna, had two duties which pulled him in opposite directions. One was his Kshatriya Dharma. The Kshatriya. Kshatriya means a warrior, basically a protector. And the opposite side were aggressors. So the Kshatriya Dharma told him, fight. But at the same time, the opposite people were also his relatives. So he had a Kula Dharma. These are all people of my family. The Kula Dharma told him, don't fight. And with these two duties pulling him in two opposite directions, he just didn't know what to do. Now, it's not an easy decision. Say we, along with our brother, work in a particular company. And in that company, some money has been lost, or money has been stolen. And we come to know it's our brother who has stolen the money. Now we say, I have a duty to my brother, I should protect him. I have a duty to the company, I should make sure that the funds are not stolen. So what should we do at that time? We say, oh, we should just let our brother get arrested. It's not that simple. So when two duties pull us in opposite directions, at that time things can become very confusing. So Arjuna's fear was that if I fight this war and our entire dynasty gets destroyed, there will not only be so much bloodshed now, so much killing now, but after that, future generations will suffer. The actions of one generation can actually affect many future generations also. Say when World War II occurred, it took a good amount of time for the world to recover. So when the partition occurred in India, Pakistan, the scars. Now I know several people who had to leave everything from Pakistan and come here. For the people who are from that generation, the scars are still there. So basically, one generation's actions can affect many future generations. So Arjuna is not sure what to do. And that is why in 2.7, when he asks, he says, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. That I want to know what is dharma. He says, I want to know what is dharma means here, what is the right thing to do. What is it that I am meant to do over here? How do I know? How do I decide? So, for Arjuna, the world presented such a big conflict. On one side you do this, there is a problem. Now Arjuna may say, okay, these are my relatives, I won't fight against them. But, is that going to solve the problem? Maybe not. He may decide not to fight, but that does not mean everybody is going to agree with him. Bhima is not going to agree to not fight. Among the Pandavas, if you see, while the Pandavas are all Kshatriyas, they are individuals. So we could say Yudhishthir was the most like a Brahminical Kshatriya. In the sense that he was very peaceful, tolerant, forgiving. Now, Arjuna was somewhere in between. Now, Bhima was a Kshatriya. You could call it Kshatriya squared. It's like he would be looking for an opportunity to fight. And just because if Arjuna decided I am not going to fight, it's not likely that the war is not going to happen. The war may still happen, and without Arjuna on his side, on the side of the Pandavas, the war may become more brutal. His family would still be killed. So he started, what am I to do in such a situation? So To just say it is material relationships, well, that's one aspect of it, no doubt. But his concern was not simply material relationship. It was a sense of duty. And he said, okay, the Kauravas had done bad things to me, but Bhishma and Drona, they are my elders. One is my grandfather, the other is my teacher. Just for a kingdom, should I fight against them? Is a kingdom really worth it? So, it's a profound dilemma for him. See, in life, there are many different kinds of distress. See, there is adversity. So, have any of you heard the word adversity? Adversity. Anyone has heard it? Okay, what does it mean? Yes, please.
In a bad situation.
Yes, adversity is some bad situation. Okay. Now I'll put you in adversity now. There is another word, atrocity. Have any of you heard the word atrocity? Okay. Is there any difference between adversity and atrocity? Where was I? At Varanasi. One boy said, this question is adversity and atrocity. Okay, so what is atrocity, or what is the difference between adversity and atrocity? Atyachar. So it is not just a bad situation, it is a bad situation intentionally created. Isn't it? That means, say, if an earthquake occurs and our home just collapses, that is one thing. But if some terrorists come and blow up the home and the home crumbles, so among these two, which is adversity, which is atrocity? Second one is atrocity. So among these two, which is more difficult to bear? Atrocity, isn't it? So if you see in the Bhagavatam, it is spoken, aho kashtam, aho anyayam, yadyuyam dharmanandanaha. So aho kashtam. Kashtam is adversity. See, the Pandavas lost their father when they were very young. What is that? Adversity. Now, Bhima, when he was just a bare teenager, he was poisoned by Duryodhan. That is atrocity, exactly. So generally, if bad things happen to us, that is difficult to bear. Bad things are done to us, that is even more difficult to bear. But the worst situation is what we call as agony. Agony means bad things have to be done by us. So we say, why would bad thing have to be done by anyone? Say, I had friends who are in the medical profession. They said in the pandemic, they had, say, only one oxygen cylinder, and there are two patients who are critically sick. And you can give the oxygen cylinder to only one person. Now, whom do you give it to? And now there was such a caseload that they didn't even have time to know the case history of the patients. So you might give the oxygen cylinder to one person, and the other person is only going to die. But this person may also have some health complication that this person may also die. So basically, you are in a situation where one choice has to be made, and that choice is going to hurt someone or the other. So, for a responsible person, this is the most difficult situation, where you just have to do something bad. We have no bad intentions, we are not bad people, but we just have to do something bad. So, this is a very difficult situation to be in. So, Arjuna was at the start of the Bhagavad Gita facing such a situation. If he fights, that's a bad thing. He'll be fighting against his elders, killing his relatives. If he's not fighting, well, that's a bad thing. People like Duryodhan will have power, and they are going to abuse the power, and they are going to do devastating things. So both ways, it was a terrible, terrible situation to be in. And this is what overwhelmed Arjuna. It's life sometimes leaves us with no good choices. It's like there are two choices and there is bad in both the choices. Then that is when we need to decide what is it that I am going to do and how am I going to do it. So it was in this situation that Arjuna faced that a decision has to be made. So if we consider how does Krishna help Arjuna make a decision? What does Krishna tell Arjuna? I said earlier that here for us God becomes big and the world becomes small as we grow spiritually. So in one sense this is what happens, but we'll see how that happens. For Arjuna, by the end, if this is the start of the Gita, this is chapter 1, then by chapter 18, what has happened for Arjuna? He is convinced and he is confident. Nashto moha smriti labdha tat prasadan maya chuta sthitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. So his intelligence has moved from confusion to conviction, and from being discouraged, disheartened, he has become confident. This is a dramatic change. And this is what the Gita can offer all of us. We all will sooner or later face some difficult situations. Say, in future you get a job. Say, you've completed your degree. Some of you are already working, but whatever. Say, now you have your parents, maybe the parents are a little elderly, and you can get a job right next to where they are staying in the same city, and you can take care of them. But then, you can go to America, and you can earn a lot of money, and you can provide financial support to them. But America is not very close. You can't come every month and to see them. Maybe you can come only once a year. Now in one sense, both you may be doing out of wanting to care for your parents only. But one is you're offering physical proximity and practical service. The other is you're offering financial support. Now, but each of these, if you're going to offer financial support, you can't offer them physical proximity. If you offer them physical proximity, there's not a job good enough that will give you anywhere that much money. So which is the thing to do at that time? So this is a difficult situation, and there's no straightforward answers to this. So in this way, when you said the Gita offers solution to all problems, what it means is the Gita will give us principles, and those principles will help us make decisions even in difficult situations. So let's try to look at what these principles are. We'll be talking about, it's like the Gita offers a 3-step analytical process. So basically, here Arjuna is confused and discouraged. Here he is convinced and encouraged, convinced and enthusiastic. So what are those 3 steps? The Gita says that the 3 fundamental realities that we need to consider in our life. And if we consider these 3 realities, then we will be able to better decide how to make a decision. What factors to consider while making a decision. So these 3 things that the Gita talks about are basically the 3 realities that exist in this world. Does anyone know what are the 3 realities that the Bhagavad Gita discusses? 3 key realities? Sorry? Okay. Those are more like 3 levels of reality. I'm talking about 3 fundamental truths of existence, 3 fundamental components of existence. Okay, the relationship is not a thing. And the first 2 are right. What are 3 fundamental Sorry? Controller, yes. So basically, there is Jeev, Jagat, Jagadish. So there are these three realities to consider. And the more we understand these three realities, the more we will be able to understand how to move forwards. So we could put this as the world, then the individual, that is the soul, and then there is transcendence. Transcendence is the ultimate reality, Krishna. So these are W-I-T. What is that? Wit. So the Bhagavad Gita, wit is intelligence, wisdom, sharpness. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us the wit by which we can learn how to make decisions in our life. So in our 3 sessions, today, tomorrow, day after, we'll be talking about these 3 realities and how understanding these 3 realities can shape our decision making. Okay. So the first aspect is, let's start with the world. What does the Gita tell us about the world? Yes, it says it is Dukkhalaya. So most of us know the verse. Let's recite it. It's 8:15 in the Bhagavad Gita. Mamupetya punarjanma Dukkhalayam ashashvatam Napnuvanti mahatmanah Samsiddhim paramam gataha. So it's a familiar verse. Let's recite it together 3 times. Mamupetya punarjanma Dukkhalayam ashashvatam Napnuvanti mahatmanah Samsiddhim paramam gataha. Mamupetya punarjanma Dukkhalayam ashashvatam Napnuvanti mahatmanah Samsiddhim paramam gataha. Punarjanma Dukkhalayam ashashvatam Napnuvanti mahatmana Samsiddhim paramam gataha. So it's interesting if we look at the verse, what does it imply? What is the implication? Yeah, this world is Dukkhalaya. So what does it mean? Or rather, there is some philosophical point. Like say we go to a doctor and we say got some disease and say actually we got some flu. Doctor, this flu is going around over here. There is right now an epidemic of this flu. Okay, that's interesting. What does it mean? Does it mean that okay, we don't have any cure for it and you're going to die? Does it mean that? Not necessarily. It could mean that actually we have run out of medicine because there are so many people who are sick. It could mean that, don't worry, this is a common disease, many people have got it, and we have cured many people, you could also be cured of it. And you say these two are completely opposite implications, isn't it? This is a common disease, this is a widespread disease. That means, so the same point, it is a widespread disease. It can mean that there is no medicine available because so many people are there who have got this disease, we run out of medicines. Or it could also mean is there's a time-tested medicine available. Many people have been cured of this. So here, so it could be the point is the same point, but there is a point and there is the point of the point. What does the point of the point means? Why are you telling me this point? what is the implication of this? So now if we consider at the start of the Gita, chapter 1, what is happening? Arjuna is clearly dukhi. He's in distress. And what is the verse number that we discussed just now? Yes, 8.15. It's around the middle of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna says here, this world is dukkhalaya. So now what is the implication? Does Krishna say that Arjuna, you are dukhi, this world is dukkhalaya, so stay dukhi now? Does he mean that? No. If you see, by the end of the Gita, Arjuna is, if not sukhi, at least he is not dukhi. He is composed. If he is distressed over here. So it's ironic over here that the message that this world is dukkhalaya actually decreases dukkha of Arjuna. You say, how can that happen? So there is knowledge and there is the implication of the knowledge. What does it imply? So many people, they say that there is one scholar who has written a book. He has written an elaborate book. He's a Bhagavad Gita is the cause of the downfall of India. He said from the time Bhagavad Gita became popular, Indians have always been losing all battles. Bhagavad Gita became influential in the 9th, 10th century. From that time the Mughals started attacking and then the British attacked. And he said there is no parallel in the history of the world about how humiliating the British defeating India and ruling India was. Because the British population who came to India was not even 1/10,000th of the Indian population. It's like 10,000 soldiers fighting against one soldier. And that one soldier wins against 10,000 soldiers. So he says there is no parallel in the history of the world of so small a number of people ruling such a large number of people. So he says, what is the reason for this? Because the Bhagavad Gita taught Indians that this world is dukkhalaya. So Indians became very passive. They didn't try to change and improve things at all. He said, so this person said, I have never seen, this in the story he says, I have never seen any civilization anywhere in the world that is as pessimistic as these Indians. Now, is that true? No. Why? Because we are Indians and we don't want to hear a criticism of ourselves? No. See, just because two things happen together doesn't necessarily mean they have a causal link. Now there are some statistical surveys which have shown that people who have bigger hands, bigger palms specifically, they have better vocabularies. And it's a widely reported statistical finding. Let me say, what is the size of the hand got to do with vocabulary? But the fact is, people who have smaller hands are small kids. And kids' vocabulary is smaller than an adult's vocabulary, isn't it? So the two facts are related. But the two facts occur together. But that doesn't mean there is a causal connection between the two. Isn't it? So in logic, there is something called causation and there is something called correlation. Correlation means A and B, they go together. But that does not necessarily mean A has caused B. Or conversely, B has caused A. They are two different things. Causation is not correlation. Say right now, I coughed. And maybe the moment I coughed, the power goes off. You say, because of your cough, the power went off. Well, that's a ridiculous thing. The two may happen together, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are related in terms of cause and effect. Now, there are many reasons how India fell. one of the things was, it is not the Bhagavad Gita philosophy how should I put it, of pessimism. It was actually a naive idealism. Idealism means what? See, Krishna himself showed that the real world is a dirty place. And when the opponent is playing dirty tricks, you cannot simply be idealistic all the time. See, when Krishna had to bring down the Pandavas, or the Kauravas, there are times when the Kauravas, you did brutal things, like 6 of them came together and tried to kill Arjuna, kill Abhimanyu, and they succeeded. But then Krishna told, Shatho Shatyam, with the cunning, you have to be cunning. Now, if you are very honest and upstanding and the other person is cunning, you cannot win with such a person. So, what happened was, some of the Kshatriyas were foolishly idealistic. Like, one of the Kshatriya principles is that if anybody surrenders, you should forgive them. But there's one Indian king who forgave a Islamic aggressor 17 times. And each time he defeated, let him go. And the next time when he came, and then one time he won, he just killed him. So, the thing is that forgiveness is good, but that's not the sole principle to consider. A Kshatriya should be forgiving, but Kshatriya also needs to consider that what is good for the whole community. I want to forgive this person, but I also need to protect my citizens. Isn't it? We have multiple duties if one principle is absolutized. So for example, in some wars, what the opposite party did was that they would have cows in front of the army. And Indian soldiers thought, Hindus thought, we cannot shoot cows. We can't kill cows. But the result of that was that they lost the war, and after they lost the war, there maybe 100 cows would have been killed. But by not fighting that war, millions and millions of cows have been killed for hundreds and thousands of, nearly 1,000 years. Isn't it so? That sometimes life just doesn't offer us a good choice. So there we have to use the buddhi to understand which is a less bad choice. Which is a less bad choice. So with respect to the British especially, they were very cunning. Now, they use a lot of deception. Now, this is not to badmouth the Britishers. Basically, they did what they had to win, and not all Indian kings. Like, say, the normal Kshatriya principle is, you fight face to face courageously. But we see Shivaji Maharaj, he won primarily by guerrilla warfare. The opposing army was 100 times bigger than him, and if he went straight and attacked them, it would just mean they would have been slaughtered. So, yes, Kshatriya should not be cowardly. But not being cowardly does not mean being foolish. Isn't it? There's a higher cause. So it is, this whole theory is wrong about that because Indians were so pessimistic. First of all, even if that were true, Indians were pessimistic. The Bhagavad Gita's teaching is not that you be pessimistic. Because if that had been the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, then why did Krishna tell Arjuna to fight? Isn't it? Krishna could have said this world is dukkhalaya, and this Duryodhana is causing you suffering. It is your own karma. Draupadi was disrobed, that is her karma only. Yudhishthira lost his kingdom, that is his karma. So you are stuck with such a family, that is your karma. So just live it. Just live with it. Did he take that as an implication? Not at all. So, the point is that Krishna tells Arjuna this world is dukkhalaya, but still after hearing that message, first of all, Arjuna doesn't become pessimistic and resigned. Arjuna becomes confident, Arjuna becomes active, and he fights. So, what is the actual implication of dukkhalaya? That's what we will try to discuss now. So, when Krishna says this world is dukkhalaya, it does not mean that stay miserable. This world is a place of distress, so stay miserable. That is not the meaning of the point at all. The point is, Don't make avoiding misery. Don't make avoiding misery the basis of your decision making. So the idea is, I'll explain what this means, that in life, when we say the world is dukkhalaya, it means sometimes life, the world is, if it is dukkhalaya, it means that life may never provide, may sometimes just not provide us any ideal solution, any perfect solution. Sometimes they say in negotiations, there's conflict, just have a win-win kind of solution. Yeah, sometimes we definitely should try for a win-win kind of solution. But sometimes it's just not possible. If one person just wants to destroy the other person, and they say the purpose of my life is to destroy you, let's have a win-win solution. And the only way I win is if I destroy you. That's just not possible. We'll talk about why some people think like this when we talk about next part in our next session. But sometimes all that we have is trade-offs. You know what does the word trade-off mean? Trade-off is, no, that is a trade. That's not a trade-off. Okay, trade-off, it is related with trade. Trade-off basically means it's like a adjustment, settling. So sometimes we just have to have, okay, I can get a job which gives me a lot of money, but it has terrible work hours. I have to work 18, 20 hours a day. I can get a job which is only 8 hours working, but I don't get that much money. Now, if I want a job which gives a lot of money and I have to work only 2 hours a day, you're not going to get a job like that. Yeah, most people are not going to get. So, sometimes we may not have an ideal solution. But we may decide this is the trade-off. Maybe at this point I have a lot of debt, so I need more money. So even if it's working a lot of time, I'll work. But somebody else may decide, I need money, but there are many other things in my life. I have my spirituality, I have my family, I have my health. So even if I get a little money, I'll accept it. So the point is, a lot of frustration comes in our life when we are not able to find a solution to a problem. But when Krishna says this world is dukkhalaya, that means he says, see, dukkha is going to come in our life. But just because dukkha is going to come doesn't mean we have to be constantly in dukkha. But that just means don't wait for a solution where there will be no dukkha at all. So in the context of Arjuna, this world is dukkhalaya means, for him what is he saying? That you have to fight against Bhishma and Drona. That is a dukkha. That is a very painful thing. But pain is unavoidable. So therefore, don't make your decision based on how can I avoid pain in my life. Now, that doesn't mean we want to go out and embrace pain. But the point is that, say, if you choose a college, now, if a student says, okay, what is the criteria for choosing the college where I have to study the least? Okay. Now you may say, if that is the college you want to study, then you might get a college like that. But then we are not going to learn much. We are not going to have a good career thereafter. So if somebody may say, okay, I have got my parents' business, I just want a degree. Okay, then that is a factor to consider. So the point I'm making over here is that if somebody is taking a decision only based on which is the path of the least suffering, that can often make a person take bad decisions. Yes, there is something more to consider, and I'll talk about what is that more shortly. But let's take another example. The word dukkhalaya is like the word Himalaya. Now what does the word Himalaya mean? It's a place of ice. So if somebody goes to the Himalaya, it's going to be cold, isn't it? So now if say somebody is going up, trekking up the Himalayas, says, why are you going up the Himalayas? To avoid cold. Really? That's really brilliant of you, Mr. Einstein. So, now if we are going to up the Himalayas, we cannot expect to avoid cold. Now that does not mean that we have to freeze in cold, that we just go wearing very thin clothes and we freeze to death. It is that if somebody is going to the Himalayas, if we consider their experience. Now cold is going to be a part of their experience. Even if somebody goes with the best warm clothes, well, sometimes you have to take a bath. At that time you have to take out your clothes. Even if you have a AC or even if you have heating, so sometime or other the cold will come in, isn't it? So we cannot avoid cold completely. Now, is cold the only thing that a person experiences in Himalayas? What else is there to experience? Yeah, sorry? Alright, so you could say there is nature's beauty. Nature's beauty, majesty. Then what else is there? So, yeah? Animals, okay. You could put it flora and fauna. Okay. Anything else? Trekking, yes. There is adventure, isn't it? So going up, there's a sense of adventure, a sense of achievement. What else is there? Sorry? If you are of a spiritual inclination, what is there? Peace, okay. There are yogis, there is. There is spirituality over there, isn't it? The spirituality could be, we could go to temples high up, Adi Badri, we can have the darshan of Badrinath, we can meet with the sages over there, we can just go in the sacred places and bask in the atmosphere over there. So, there is a lot to experience over there, apart from the cold. But all that experience will only be possible when we accept that it is going to be cold. Isn't it? If somebody is constantly complaining, oh, it's so cold, it's so cold, it's so cold, then people around will say, what you are saying is so old, so old, so old. Isn't it? So if we fixate on cold, then what will happen is our experience will only be the cold. That will fill our experience. If somebody thinks, oh, I don't want to experience any cold, then even a little bit cold will be a big problem. Now, on the other hand, if somebody wants to go to a holy place, somebody wants the sense of adventure, say, at that time, somebody wants to say, they want to focus on spirituality. They are going on a spiritual pilgrimage over there. Then what will happen is, in that spirituality will fill their experience. And cold will still be there, but cold will become a small experience. So for all of us, it is that each one of us, we need to decide what is it that we are going to focus on. So for everybody in life, there will be distress. That is just the fact of life. The distress may be of different kinds, and yes, there are some distresses which are far worse than others. Before I came for this class, I was talking with a friend, very nice devotee scholar. He's based in Israel, and he's actually stays right close to Lebanon, the border. So he says that it's like every night we hear the alarms going off, the rockets being discharged, the missiles being discharged. And although they have the Iron Dome, but nobody knows how many missiles can it sustain. And if at any time the Iron Dome, you know what is the Iron Dome? Iron Dome is basically like a technological marvel. So it's like when it is cold, you create you have an umbrella. So Israel has got this high-tech system that whenever it detects a missile coming towards Israel, then all of Israel, or at least the major inhabited part of the Israel, gets covered with this dome, like an electronic dome, and then whatever missiles come, they hit the missile, and it just dissipates. It hits the dome, and it dissipates. So it's extraordinary the way they have created it. But still, it's untested if hundreds and hundreds of missiles are coming at the same time. So how much can it sustain? Because what happens is that the missiles also can become stronger and stronger. They can get more expensive missiles. So he says that for almost 1 year, I have not slept continuously for more than 1 hour. Like 1 hour I sleep, then I hear something, we wake up, and near their home there's a bomb shelter. So they rush to the bomb shelter, and they come out and they go back inside. So certainly in the world, there are places of greater distress, and there are places of lesser distress. So we're not saying that all distress is the same. Certainly there are more distresses. But at the same time, everybody in life will have distress. So when you talk about distress, it can range from dissatisfaction to devastation. So what is the difference, do you think, between dissatisfaction and devastation? Have you heard the word devastation? In cricket, sometimes it is a devastating knock or devastating bowling spell or something like that, they have it. So what is the meaning of devastation? Completely destroyed. So like if we have certain plans, this is how we should do. Devastation means things are completely opposite of what we expected. Opposite of expectation, plan, hope, dream. That is devastation. So we expected, say, to win against team 5-0, and they defeat us 0-5. So, so it's complete opposite. That is devastation. So, and what is dissatisfaction? So things are not good enough, are not as good as we expected. So now, in one sense, between dissatisfaction and devastation, there is a huge difference. But in terms of distress, both are distressing, isn't it? Say, if we come expecting a feast, and we're expecting a particular delicacy is going to be there, and maybe we like malpua, we expect malpua to be there, and there is no malpua, there is only poha. And then, okay, it's not the end of the world, it's not devastation, but still there is dissatisfaction, isn't it? And it is not joyful. So when we say distress in the world, that doesn't mean it has to be devastation all the time. It can be dissatisfaction also. Things are not as good as I had hoped, as I had expected, or things are totally terrible. So in life, distress is always going to come upon everyone, and we need to make peace with that reality. We need to make peace with that. So when the Gita says this world is dukkhalaya, it means basically don't expect an ideal situation in life. Don't expect that life will be like utopia. When I go to Canada, I stay at one devotee couple's home, and so that the husband is a marketing in charge for a big company, but he's also a marriage priest. He has learned the rituals. He's from South Indian family, so he's learned the rituals, and he does marriages. And his wife is into what they call as family law. Now, family law is just a polite word for a divorce attorney. Divorce attorney means when a couple gets separated, how should the property be divided? So they joke, we are the complete couple. You come to the husband to get married, you come to the wife to get separated. So this Mataji, both of them are Indians, settled there in Canada. This Mataji was telling me that the kind of reasons why sometimes people come because of for separation. This happens especially among Westerners. I don't want to generalize. And there are many people who are really responsible. And he said that, one woman came, I want to separate from my husband. And in America, in the Western world, there's very rigid separation of roles. Like in India, if we go to attorney and say, no, I want to separate, then the attorney maybe is a little older than us. He's like an uncle or a father figure, and he say, what is the issue? Do you really want to do this? And then they'll try, can you settle things? They'll try to give some advice. But there in the West, there's some complete separation of roles. That if I want to fix my marriage, I'll go to marriage counselor. If I want to end my marriage, I go to attorney. The attorney is not supposed to give me advice how to fix my marriage. So, but still they have to fill the documents and give reason. So this woman, she said that, okay, why do you want to separate? Because, no, I and my husband are incompatible. Now, incompatible is a very common reason, incompatibility. Okay, so, because it is very vague. So they have to give some more description. What is incompatible? So she asked, what is incompatible? She says, we cannot agree on the temperature of the AC in our home. So, there are people who don't even have a home. What to speak of AC in their home? And she said that, you really? Is that the reason you couldn't even speak? He says, yeah, I thought he is my dream partner. And if he is my dream partner, if you're really my dream partner, our body temperatures should sync with each other. Now, it's such a completely crazy expectation, isn't it? So, another couple, they came and they said, they said, we want to separate. Why? He says, I am a roller, he's a squeezer. He says, what do you mean? He says that when in the bathroom, you use a toothpaste. So, I roll the toothpaste. That means, the front part toothpaste should come out first. Then the part behind it. So the shape of the toothpaste, it has to be like art. So some people are like, they are rollers. This part squeeze first and this part after. Some people are squeezers. Kaise with the bado? So he said that is incompatibility. And we want to separate because of that. Now, of course, there could be some bigger reasons. But the point is that if somebody has this ideal, this dream, they're going to be a perfect couple. It's like, what happens is, what do they say? Love is blind, marriage is an eye-opener. So, nobody is ideal. We are not ideal, other people are not ideal. So, everybody has to accept that some amount of dissatisfaction is going to be there. But if people go into life itself expecting there should be no problem, there should be no incompatibility, then what happens? Then there is then even a small problem becomes big. So one of my godbrothers, he came to my spiritual master and he said, in 80s, he said, I want to join as a brahmachari. And so he thought, he's a very well-educated person, he thought, Maharaj will be very happy, I want to join. At that time, in the 80s, not many people were joining as brahmachari, not many educated people. So a spiritual master asked him, why do you want to join? He was still taken aback. He thought, oh, welcome, wonderful, he said, oh, there are so many problems in the world. So then, there are so many problems in the ashram also. If you leave the world because there are problems and come to the ashram, then when there are problems in the ashram, where will you go? He said, let me think about it. So then, after a few days he came back and he said, I actually had not thought about that question, but actually, he said, I've read Prabhupada's Lilamrut. I've seen how much effort he has done for preaching this mission, for spreading this mission. I want to assist in this mission. I want to assist you. I want to assist the followers of Srila Prabhupada. So Maharaj said, this is a good motive. If you are simply trying to avoid problems, Problems are going to be there everywhere. Of course, you can say that there are more problems some places, less problems some places. But if somebody is simply trying to avoid problems, that is not a healthy motive for decision making. Yes, the ashram is still in the material world. So there is going to be some dukkha here also. But it's like somebody is going up the Himalayas and they are so eager to see that they have the darshan of Badrinath. Then that eagerness will make sure that, okay, it's so cold or it's so tough, I'm so tired. All that will be overshadowed by the eagerness. So similarly, for us, when we are making decisions, we need to have a higher purpose to our life. So when we have that higher purpose, then the dukkha that we inevitably will face in life, we'll be able to deal with that. So when Krishna is telling Arjuna this world is dukkhalaya, the main implication of this is not that it is dukkhalaya, so say dukhi. Not that don't ever try to decrease the distress in your life. No, it's not that. It is focus on what is meaningful for you. Focus on what you really value doing in life. And when that is prominent, then distress will become manageable. So I'll make one more point and then we'll have a few questions. So now, when we talk tomorrow about individual, at that time we'll talk more about the principle of dharma. What is dharma? What is duty? What is bhakti? We'll talk about all that when we come to it. But the principle here is that, see, in life, we want pleasure. But actually what we want even more is meaning. Meaning means artha. We want to do something of value. How many of you like humor? Humor. How many of you like humor? Okay. Those who are not raising their hand, either they don't understand the question or they really do. They are really weird. I say, who cannot like humor? We not like inappropriate humor. Sometimes a joke at somebody's expense, it may be like not a good thing. But everybody likes to laugh. So now, if we like humor, then will we like comedy shows? Yeah, good comedy show we can like, maybe. But suppose tomorrow, somebody comes and tells us that from tomorrow morning, or from now onwards, you have no financial responsibilities, you have no family responsibilities, you have no professional responsibilities, you have no obligation at all. I will take care of everything for you, you just have to do one thing. From morning to night, sit and watch comedy shows for the rest of your life. Now, would we want to do that? Oh yeah, it's fun, but maybe if we are bored, half an hour we watch a comedy show, if we are really frustrated, we spend 2-3 hours. If we are really fed up, we might just binge on comedy shows for a weekend. But after that, we'll get bored, isn't it? Just laughing, what is the point of it? So see, what happens is, if there is pleasure without meaning, it becomes boring. Sorry, where it is here. Where is pleasure but no meaning? So just watching comedy shows, watching comedy is what? It is meaningless pleasure. And meaningless pleasure, we don't want just meaningless pleasure, isn't it? So now we could say, this is the worst. This is unbearable. If there is no meaning and there is no pleasure, isn't it? Say, if we have a job that pays very little and we don't like that job at all. So there's no job satisfaction, there is no remuneration. So why am I in this job at all? Isn't it? If there is no pleasure and no meaning, that's a terrible situation to be in. But we often say we are pleasure-seeking creatures. That is true. But Sat Chit Ananda. Chit is conscious, and with our consciousness, we seek meaning in life. So we don't, Ananda comes later actually. So what we really want is meaningful pleasure. So you could say if there is meaning and pleasure, that is the best, isn't it? So I love the job, it pays me a lot, then that's the best situation to be in. Hmm? There is meaning also, there is pleasure also. Now, what about a situation where there is meaning but not pleasure? This is acceptable. It may not be the best, but it is acceptable for us. Isn't it? Say, if you are studying in a university. Now, maybe the hostel is not very comfortable, the food is not very comfortable. But you understand, this will help me to have a good career in the future. So that sense of meaning is there. So meaning, we often want meaning more than pleasure also. Not all the time, but frequently we are ready to give up pleasure for the sake of meaning. Like when the Indian independence struggle was happening, at that time Subhash Chandra Bose said that तुम मुझे खून दो मैं तुम्हें आज़ादी दूंगा. So I'll give you only blood and sweat and toil. That I promise you, give me all these and I will give you freedom. Now, maybe under British rule Indians were not comfortable, they're not prosperous, but definitely it was far better than going out into, from a physical comfort perspective, it was better than going out and fighting in a war, often with less weapons, against better armed enemies. But the azadi, the independence had such meaning that the pleasure, okay, we are ready to sacrifice it. So the point is, for all of us, meaning is important. And meaning is often more important than pleasure. That doesn't mean we don't want pleasure. We want pleasure, but the whole world tells us that pleasure is what will make us happy. But eat, the advertisement, what they do is eat this, buy this, watch this, touch this. That will make you happy. Not really. Why? Because that is, in one sense, just possessing. That is meaningless. See, generally when people want to possess a lot of things, at the core of our heart we know that just buying a lot of things and flaunting my wealth, that's not going to make me happy. What we hope is that if I'm wearing flashy clothes, if I'm having a lot of expensive things, then people will be attracted to me. People will love me. People will respect me. And that is what we think is meaningful. So in one sense, we look for possessions, but possessions themselves are not meaningful. We are looking for love, we are looking for relationships. And relationships are what we think we will get by this. So pleasure and meaning, are they related? Some places they can be. Like sometimes they both can go together. But when they go opposite, at that time, it is, at least in some parts of our life, we need to be ready to choose meaning at the cost of pleasure. So then that's how we learn and grow. So when Krishna is telling Arjuna that this world is dukkhalaya, what its implication is that don't let gaining pleasure or avoiding pain be the basis of your decision making. Think of what is meaningful. Think of what will bring meaning and purpose and value to your life. And use that as a basis for decision making. Now, how does one find meaning? For that, we'll discuss the next two parts. Our individuality and ultimately transcendence. God's place and purpose in our life. How does that relate with it? But essentially, this dukkhalayam is not a recipe for pessimism. So we discussed today, Gita, the top, I'll summarize what we discussed. Gita is basically a guide for decision making. That is the point we are discussing. So I discussed broadly three main points. We talked about how in the Gita, Arjuna is torn between two duties which pull him in actually in opposite directions. One is the Kshatriya Dharma, the other is the Kula Dharma. And we discussed how for a responsible person, the greatest pain is not just through adversity or through atrocity, it is through agony Agony means what? That a bad thing has to be done by me. So Arjuna was in agony. Arjuna's fear was what? That what is the right thing to do? I do not know. This is a very, very painful situation for Arjuna to be in. So the Gita helps Arjuna to make a decision. And how exactly does it do that? That's what we are going to discuss. That, what does he talk about? W-I-T. What W was? World. So nature of the world, nature of the individual, and understanding transcendence. So this is the Jagat, Jeev and Ishvara. So from being confused, if you understand these things, we can become convinced, we can become encouraged. So then I discussed elaborately, the world is Dukkhalaya. So when it is Dukkhalaya, what does it mean? Does it simply mean that stay in distress, stay in misery? No. It is not a call for pessimism. It's you are in distress, stay in distress. We discussed in this connection the difference between correlation and causation. If Indians lost against others, it is not because they were pessimistic to the Bhagavad Gita, they were like naively idealistic. So the Gita tells us to be real, it's realism. The word realism means what? That don't expect ideal situations or ideal solutions. Be ready for trade-offs. Sometimes we have to accept that I won't get everything right. So I have to accept that something may not work out, but something will work out. So Dukkhalaya, what is the trade-off here? That don't decide based on avoiding distress. How can I avoid distress in life? That should not be the basis of our decision making. We discussed about how if somebody wants to go up the Himalayas, cold is going to be a part of their experience. But they can also have spirituality as a big part of their experience. Similarly for us, distress is going to be a part of our life's experience, but that doesn't have to be our soul experience. And in that connection, we discuss how, for us, how can we accept this Dukkhalaya? Accepting Dukkha. How is this possible? When we understand that more important than pleasure is meaning. So there is something of value for us. So we discuss this quadrant, that if there is only pleasure but no meaning, that doesn't work. It becomes boring, it becomes tiring. If there's neither pleasure nor meaning, that's terrible. This is acceptable. That if there is meaning but no pleasure. And now the most desirable are both pleasure and meaning. So Krishna, right now Arjuna is in, if we consider 1, 2, 3, 4, Arjuna is in which quadrant? He should be in the, or we should all situate ourselves in the third quadrant. That prioritize meaning even if there is no pleasure, temporarily at least. So how to find that meaning so that the absence of pleasure is not felt so badly. Like if I am focused on going up the Himalayas, then the cold doesn't trouble me so much. So how to find that meaning, that we'll discuss in tomorrow's session. Any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for wonderful explanation. Prabhuji, you explained about the Himalaya and distress and other things we face. So, like, it is different from the theory of attraction, but how can we, like, explain in more better way, like it is different from the principle of attraction? Like, whatever we think like we can get and we can achieve that.
how is the Bhagavad Gita's teaching different from the principle of attraction?
Like the second point about the Himalaya and that you explained like there is snow, cold as well as the
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So the principle of attraction, we can switch that off, I think. Yeah? The principle of attraction is the idea that whatever you desire, if you desire it strongly enough, then it will become manifested. So there is some truth to it, but it is not the ultimate truth. See, like one of you mentioned earlier, the 3 levels of reality. Which are the 3 levels of reality? Yes, there is spiritual, mental, and physical. So for something to happen, all 3 levels of reality need to work cooperatively. So, for example, if I want to make some art, if I want to draw something right now, so then my hands have to work properly so that I write or draw something. But say if I'm drawing some particular shape which I'm not very confident, then my mind also has to be involved so that I can draw it as well as I can. So the mind's effort is also a part of the effort that we do. And many times people make efforts at the physical level, but the mind is sabotaging them internally. They're doing something at the physical level, but inside the mind is saying, it's not going to work out. You're not going to succeed in this. Now it's like our own energy is being cut off. Like our army is going to fight, and while the army is charging, some half of the soldiers are telling the other soldier, we are not going to win, better we should not fight only. Well, if somebody is discouraging like that, it's a very dangerous thing, isn't it? So the mind is also a part of the picture. And getting the mind aligned when we are trying to do something challenging, it's important. Now the problem is that there is one extreme is the mind doesn't matter at all. In the history of science, there was a phase when science almost completely rejected the very idea of the mind. It is a school of thought called physicalism. Not materialism, but physicalism. Physicalism means physical reality is the only reality. That people are simply stimulus response machines. What goes on inside doesn't matter. So the mind was completely neglected. Why is there disease? Oh, this particular germ has come in, you put in this medicine, and the germ goes away, and you get cured. To some extent, there is truth to it. But they found some people get cured faster, some people get cured slower. And a lot depends on what a person's state of mind is. So, the one extreme is to treat the mind doesn't matter at all. But the other extreme is to treat that the mind is all that matters. So, for example, somebody may be a very strong believer or proponent of this law of attraction. But suppose that person says, I'm not going to grow old, I'm not going to grow old, I'm not going to grow old. Well, is that actually going to stop the aging process? No. Now we may say, yeah, age is a matter of the mind. Well, age is partly a matter of the mind. Like some cricketer is 45 and that person bats very well. That's amazing, we may say. We appreciate that. But why do we appreciate that? Because normally everybody can't do it at the age of 45. Isn't it? And even that same cricketer, we may say age is a matter of the mind, but that same cricketer at the age of 25 would be far more athletic than he was at 45. Maybe they're more experienced now and able to perform better. So is age just a matter of the mind? No. Is age a matter of the mind? Yes, of course. If somebody is constantly thinking, I have grown so old, I have grown so old, I have grown so old, then what they can do also they will not be able to do. So the mind is one factor. So going back to the Himalaya example, that are the Himalayas cold? Yes, of course they are cold. But if we dwell on it too much, the cold will become unbearable. Or we will feel the cold much more. But if we don't dwell on it so much, we won't feel it that much. But it is not that there is no objective reality of the Himalayas being a cold place. So the problem of the principle of manifestation is it holds that the physical reality doesn't matter at all, in the sense that all of physical reality can be completely changed just by changing mental reality. No, mental reality can play a part in changing physical reality. But physical reality is in some aspects unchangeable. So my having a positive attitude, oh, I'm going to have a wonderful time climbing up the Himalayas, I'm going to have such a great adventure, that is not going to change the objective reality if the temperature is 4 degrees Celsius. It's not going to change that. So that the mistake is to think that the mind is all that matters. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji, for this wonderful analysis and how we can understand Gita very well. Prabhuji, one question was coming in the mind that we often hear in our spiritual discourses the role of prayers and mercy also. That here we are like discussing 3 levels of realities. So as per how it happens in the world, how Lord is acting, how we have to do. But then we also hear that if we are not able to do, then we have to do prayers. And then if Lord will be merciful on us, then we'll be able to do that distress which we are facing may go away also. So Prabhuji, how that role is there in this discussion?
Yeah, good point. So what can prayers do? See, prayers, Krishna is the supreme controller. So Krishna can act at all 3 levels. At the physical level, Krishna can actually remove the problem itself. That is possible. That means, say if we have a boss at a workplace who is a terrible person, basically, is not just troubling everyone, and we pray to Krishna and that boss gets transferred somewhere else. That's removing the problem itself. Now sometimes it can happen at a mental level. At a mental level, that means sometimes maybe we get some insight, our attitude changes, something happens and it removes the pressure of the problem. The problem may be there, but we don't feel the pressure so much. That's when something else becomes bigger. That, okay, I'm doing this job not to please this boss, but I want to earn Lakshmi so that I can take care of my family, or I want to do this particular service and it's helping me to give donations for this, whatever. So then the focus, like I said, one thing is smaller, the other thing is bigger. So maybe the boss behavior just becomes smaller. We all may have experienced this, that maybe before we started chanting Hare Krishna, practicing bhakti, a problem would cause a lot of anxiety to us. Now a similar problem comes, we're still anxious, but it is not that big. So the problem is there, but the pressure is far lesser. Now at a spiritual level, that it is that if Krishna can act and then he can remove the attachment completely. Not that it makes us irresponsible, but say if somebody was mad about cricket, and then if India loses, they are heartbroken. I was in Canada. I met one person. He's from Sri Lanka. I thought he's from India. He's from Sri Lanka, and he told me that it seems between 2011, India defeated Sri Lanka only in the World Cup. Yeah, from 2011 to 2015-16, it seems Sri Lanka went to the 3 World Cup finals, different kind of World Cups, T20 and this and that, and they lost in all 3 finals. So he said, 2 of my friends were there, we were all big cricket fans, and each time Sri Lanka lost, we were devastated. And then finally, 3rd time it happened, he said one of my friends committed suicide, and the other friend attempted suicide, but he survived. So now, he said, I was also very, very distressed, but I said, this is terrible. None of the players committed suicide, by the way, they are very serious about the game, but after they understand it's a game. So he said, that's when I felt that, this attachment to cricket is becoming toxic. It may take my life. That's when I started exploring. Then somehow he got a Bhagavad Gita. I started reading the Bhagavad Gita. And then he got a job in Canada. He came there. Then he met devotees. So he said, now, I don't feel any attachment to cricket at all. But okay, loses, wins, what's the big deal? So now the focus has become much more on Krishna. So now the mental and spiritual, I don't want to go with the exact difference, but like the emotional investment completely goes away. Mental is more like the perspective changes. So Krishna can work at any of these levels. So when we pray to Krishna and Krishna gives his mercy, he can remove the problem, he can remove the grip the problem has on our mind, or he can just remove the whole attachment because of which we get caught in the problem. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? Maybe one or two questions and we'll stop after that. Yeah, where is the mic?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for this wonderful session. And प्रभु मेरा सवाल ये है कि आपने अभी एक quadrant के बारे में बताया था pleasure and meaning का. तो प्रभु जैसे कि हमारी जैसे कि bad habits होती है तो लाइक वो एक्चुअली मतलब जल्दी हमारे जीवन में आ जाती है जिसमें लाइक प्लेजर रहता है लेकिन मीनिंग उसकी कुछ नहीं होती है. और वही जो हमारी गुड हैबिट्स होती है लाइक सुबह जल्दी उठना, पूजा करना, चैंटिंग वगैरह, उन समय बड़ी दिक्कत आती है जबकि उसमें मीनिंग भी होती है और प्लेजर भी होता है. तो कुछ मतलब एक तो जो हमारी बैड हैबिट्स है उसे गुड हैबिट्स पे करने का कोई तरीका बता दीजिए क्या हो सकता है. एंड ऐसा मतलब क्यों होता है कि हम बैड हैबिट्स जल्दी आसानी से ले लेते हैं.
Okay. Now, why is it that we succumb to bad habits earlier? It's not necessarily true. It may be, but it's not necessarily true. So the mind is basically like a programmed and programmable machine. It's a device, it's a machine. It's programmed right now in a particular way and it is programmable. But it is not just, like if we can program it for good, we can program it for bad. That's way. You were there in the morning class when I talked about this Bollywood and Bhagavad Gita. So it's like that. But then it's not just that simple. It is that if we consider a floor. Now if water falls over here, if the floor is flat, then water won't go anywhere, it will stay there only. But if the floor is inclined, then what happens? As soon as water falls, it will start moving in the direction of the inclination. So for us, our mental floor has certain inclinations to it. And whatever is in that inclination, our thoughts, our desires, our behaviors go in that direction rapidly. So we live in the material world and we live in a world where Rajasic and Tamasic pleasures are advertised a lot. And Sattvic activities are also talked about, but they are not that aggressively advertised. No, you won't say, we will see ads about buying this and eating this. You don't see ads about meditation and prayer. Isn't it? It's not, it is there, it is not that it's not there, but it's not promoted that much. So because of all this, because of the kind of environment we live in, our mind is inclined in a particular direction. And that's why activities that are associated with that inclination, they are caught by our mind faster. We go in that direction faster. But fortunately, this inclination of the mind, it can be changed. Now, if this is a negative side, we can bring it toward the positive. It takes time. But it just requires repetition. So during the intermediate period, now we need to find something, say for example, what is good for us and what feels good for us. That means what is good is what you can say is meaningful. What feels good is what is pleasurable, what is enjoyable. So if we are finding that developing some habit. It takes time. Although there is pleasure and meaning both, still it is not happening. Now that may be because right now we are not able to experience that pleasure so much. Because our mind is conditioned in a particular way. Krishna says that yattad agre vishamiva pariname amritopamam. There's something which tastes like poison in the beginning. They will taste like nectar in the end, but initially it will be like poison. So it's pleasurable, but the pleasure doesn't come as immediately. So for example, maybe hearing kirtans, that's enjoyable. It's satisfying. Now maybe hearing Bollywood songs is also enjoyable. But depending on what we are habituated to, both are music, but one kind of music our mind may immediately get attracted to. Now we may also like kirtans. It's not that we don't like them, but it requires some effort to get our mind used to it. So that's why it's good if we can understand that here there is pleasure, intelligence is required, that I have to push through this poison till I get to the nectar. And if we have association, then pushing through that becomes easier. If we see everybody is doing something positive, then it becomes easier to do that. Okay? Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Where's the mic? Just speak, no problem.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So once you are talking about that how only the mind is not the only reality. So how can we understand these verses like we hear in the 11th verse, the Avanti Brahman's realization that the only thing is mind because of which we are experiencing all types of suffering.
Manah param karamamananti. Well, in scripture, different things are spoken according to context. So, in a particular context, a particular thing may be emphasized, and that is true, but that may not be the only truth at all times. If, for example, that at particular times we say that chanting is the Yuga Dharma. Just chant and all perfection will come. That is true. But then in other places we say association is the most important thing. When we have association, then naturally in association chanting will also be done. Some other places it may say that actually if we don't study Shastra, then we won't have the buddhi. Without buddhi, we will not be able to choose association, we will not be able to do chanting. Now which is important? If you go to Vrindavan, Vrindavan is the greatest of all dhams. You go to Mayapur Dham Mahatmya says, Mayapur is the greatest of all dhams. If you read about Kashi, Kashi is the greatest of all dhams. So, the point is, in scripture, there is this principle, generally speaking. When one point is emphasized, that point is emphasized almost exclusively. But if that were the only teaching, then why have any other verses at all? Why not have this as the conclusion of every scripture or every pastime? The mind is the only reality. And mana param karanam mananti. What does that mean? If you look, this is the broader scriptural context, but we look at that particular pastime also. There is, before that Brahmana is in a prosperous situation, and from the position of being very respected, he starts becoming disrespected and humiliated, and still is able to tolerate it. So that shows the power of the mind. But does that mean that there is no difference between the previous situation and this situation? Why does Krishna tell Arjuna to fight a war? Krishna could have said, the Kauravas are torturing you, Kauravas are doing anyaya. That whole concept of anyaya is just a play of the mind. Isn't it? Krishna doesn't say that. There is an objective reality. So there is dharma. Krishna says, I come to establish dharma. Why does Krishna have to come to establish dharma? Dharma and adharma, everything is just a play of the mind. Is it? No. So, yes, the mind does play a very important reality. And there are times when we may not be able to do anything at all, except adjust our mind so that we can make peace with the reality. But there are times when we can and should make a change even at the physical level. So, when the Pandavas were exiled in the forest, at that time, they accepted. This is the term we accept this as exile. When Lord Ram had to go to the forest, he accepted that. He accepted it gracefully, graciously. But when Sita was abducted, Ram said, it's all, Sita is with me, Sita is with Ravan, it's all just a play of the mind. No. He's the husband, it is a duty to protect his wife. And Ravan is a demon. What he would do, if that curse had not been there, would be horrifying. So, there are other levels of reality also. Okay? Yes, bro, last question.
That class, but yesterday I asked that level of forgiveness. You were telling you can ask in the class, but how to forgive the people when they do some atrocities at different levels, or so what our thought process as a devotee?
Okay, I'll answer this briefly, and we can, if it doesn't get answered, we'll talk about it tomorrow more. See, forgiveness, to forgive or not. There are three, in general, the Mahabharata has a lot of discussion about this. See, whenever there is any wrongdoing is there, I'm just using the word wrongdoing, I'm not using the word sin or crime. Sin is more moral, crime is more legal. It's just wrongdoing. So there are three stakeholders. What are the stakeholders? Stakeholders means people who are involved in it. The stakeholders are the victim, the victimizer, and the society, or you could say people in general. What do I mean? Say if one person robs someone. So now there is a robber, there is the robbed, and there is people in general. Now people in general, they may become victims. If that robber runs free, other people may get robbed. Or if that robber goes away free, other people may themselves choose to become robbers. Isn't it? So, when we consider what am I to do when some wrong is being done, so these three stakeholders have to be considered. The victim, the victimizer, and people in general. Now, based on that, what is the situation? The victim may choose to forgive, and that is good for the victim's perspective. But from the victimizer's perspective, is forgiveness going to lead to a change of heart from that person or not? That has to be considered. So for the victim, there has to be generally some kind of reparation. Reparation means compensation. If somebody has been robbed, just forgive. But he robbed 10 lakh rupees from you, just forgive it. No? I will forgive, but he has to return the money. Isn't it? So that if some wrong has been done, there has to be some reparation. Now reparation could be in different ways. Some people may say that, oh, he's a member of my family only, so we'll deal with it. We don't want to go to the law. But reparation has to be there for the victim. For the victimizer, at the very least, there has to be restriction. That means you cannot do this again. Now the best is not just restriction, there is reformation. That the person changes, not only stops doing the wrong thing, but starts doing the right thing. Now we can't really force people to get reformed. Like in jails, people cannot necessarily be reformed. Sometimes people can be reformed, but at the very least, there has to be restriction. It's if somebody has a gun and they have misused the gun to kill an innocent person. And you say, okay, we forgive you. And the person takes the gun and shoots somebody else again. At the very least, restriction has to be there. Restriction means maybe, okay, we are not going to punish you, but you are not going to have the gun again. At least till you show some sign of change. When Kamsa killed the first 6 children of Vasudeva and Devaki, and when the 8th child turned out to be apparently a princess, a female who turned out to be Durga, the goddess. So at that time, Kamsa used to worship Durga. So he thought Durga has come from Devaki. Devaki must be a very special woman. He sought forgiveness from her. And amazingly enough, Vasudeva and Devaki forgave him. But that forgiveness did not mean they trusted him. They said, actually, our 8th child, not that girl. Actually, the 8th child, I sneakily took him and I kept him in Vrindavan. He didn't tell him that. Why? Because, okay, I may punish him, but there is forgiving. Forgiving is not the same as trusting. Forgiving is for the past. Okay, what you have done, I'm not going to hold it against you. But trusting is for the future. And trust needs to be earned. So, there has to be restriction in the sense that you cannot make the same mistake again. But then you have to earn. Now, for people in general, people in general, at the very least, or you cannot at the very least, you can say there are two, there has to be protection so that they are not victimized. That's why, okay, this person may not attack the same person again. Oh, I came to know that you are very powerful, if I attack you, you will get in trouble. But, that person is foolish, that person is powerless, I'll attack that person. And there has to be protection, so that people are protected. And also, there has to be regulation. That they don't see, oh, people can get away with crime, I'll also start doing crime. That's why a principle in justice is justice should not just be done, it should be seen to be done. So regulation has to be there. So now, how exactly all these can be balanced? So at an individual level, somebody might forgive. But if somebody, so generally for Brahmanas, forgiveness is recommended. But for Kshatriyas, justice is required. And one part of justice may be forgiving. But the police can't say that, you are a criminal, I forgive you. Well, the police duty is to arrest and bring before a court, and the court may decide. So, if the police adopt a default policy, all crime will be forgiven over here. What is going to happen is, the only thing will happen that the idea that it is a crime will be forgotten. And everybody start doing crime. Actually, in California, they did this with disastrous results. During the pandemic, they decided that, people are starving, people are suffering. So if anybody goes to any supermarket and robs below $750, shoplifting below $750, they'll not be punished. And now I thought people will take food or something like that. But people are very intelligent. They will take some Louis Vuitton purses of $700. They will take a phone which is just $749. And then they will sell it on eBay and make money out of it. So, now if the government starts making forgiveness as a policy, then it will lead to disaster in society. Isn't it? So that is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. Arjuna, as an individual, you may choose to forgive the Kauravas. But you are not just an individual. You, as a Kshatriya, are a state leader. And your actions are going to affect everyone else also. Therefore, forgiveness is a very important principle. And in many relations, in our normal day-to-day interactions, it is always good to forgive. Because sometimes I make a mistake, sometimes you make a mistake. And it's good to forgive. But when somebody is playing an administrative role, then they have to consider the bigger picture. In a family, my brother says something to me, or I say something to my brother, husband says something to wife does something to the husband. Those things try to forgive. But if we are talking about a bigger administration, then multiple factors need to be considered before a decision is to be made. Okay? Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna. Let's thank Prabhuji by loudly 3 times chanting Hri Bol, Hri Bol, Hri Bol. So now we have Prasadam.